Here we are again. We're training some more today, aiming towards chess improvement. We got a couple of goals in mind. The Canberra Chess Club Championship 2023 is one of them, if we get to play the whole thing. If not, we're going for a 2000 rating on chess.com by the end of the current year. To do that, we are doing tactics training for an hour and a half, at least twice a week. We're going to be analyzing a master level game at least once a week, and we're going to be playing 2 training games per week. The first training game was a loss. It was pretty bad, really, but it just emphasizes the need to do more tactics. So we did a tactics session yesterday. We have a tactics session again today. The current streak, which we started yesterday, we've got 26 correct, and now we're up to the 27th puzzle. And the goal is, as time progresses, to be able to solve 50 puzzles correctly in a row consistently. That's what we want to be able to do by the time we get up to this tournament. And the tournament is in September, which is a good few months from now. So without further ado, I've got an alarm on for an hour and a half from now, and let's get into it. Let's do tactics. Now in this position, it's black to move. And it's nice that we're stopping white from castling. That is nice. It does seem that, we could get into some trouble with our queen if this bishop moves away. Where would our queen go? I suppose this would be the only safe square. But in the meantime, it is our move, and we don't have to just preemptively move the queen away immediately if we don't want to. One idea is that we could play a move like bishop c4, trying to get a checkmate here. The problem is that this c4 square is in fact guarded by the knight, and there's no way for us to kick this knight away. We can't use our bishop, we can't use any pawns. It's stable there, which really means that regardless of which way we go with the bishop, trying to support a checkmate attempt here, the knight is just going to spoil all the fun there. So I don't think that idea works, but what I think does work is if we attack this queen. Because if we attack this queen, even if white then unveils an attack against our queen, well, what we can do is actually use our queen to take the rook here with check. And regardless of how he recaptures, we've already won a rook. And yes, he's going to take a queen, but after he takes the queen, we're going to come back and take this queen. So it's a queen trade, but where we also get a spare rook. So for that reason, if we do attack the queen, he can't simply attack our queen. That's not going to work. What he may be able to do is take our rook. And if he takes our rook, well, then we take back and we're good, because even if he attacks our queen, we know we have this square to go to. And in fact, with this queen gone, we would even have this square to go to. The question is, what if he doesn't take the rook? What if he moves the queen? Well, he can't move it here because we simply take. He can't move here or here or here because they're all covered. And he can't move here, that's covered. Can't move here, so I really don't see any other option, and I think this is going to be the move. He takes, we take back, and we're off to a good start. Let's try and keep this streak going. So this looks almost like we've got a checkmate here. The only thing that prevents this from being a checkmate is the fact that the queen is guarding on the square. Interestingly as well, the queen in conjunction with the rook are threatening to take this bishop, and both of those observations lead me to this move, which is rook e3. Rook e3 is really nice because we're attacking the queen. We're also stopping the attack against the bishop because now there's a rook in the way, so only the rook is being attacked. And if the queen takes the rook, well, then it's abandoned this square, and that allows us to take checkmate. So actually, this move does not allow the queen to capture. Instead, the queen would have to keep an eye on this square from somewhere else. But wherever it goes, whether here or here, we still can take this rook. And if the queen recaptures, we're going to get our checkmate over here. So I think that must be the move. I don't see anything else, but let's look, because sometimes I can be a bit too hasty, and of course sometimes I can be too slow. But let's have a quick look. What happens if he inserts this check? I think if he inserts this check, we can move our king away. We can move our king away. Perhaps not to this square, because then let's say he takes the rook, then we actually wouldn't be able to deliver the checkmate because our queen would be pinned to our king. So therefore, after this check, we may have to come here. And you could say, well, that gives up a pawn, but then we take the queen, and after he takes back, well, we've won a lot of material. And the other thing is there's no other checks here. So, if he gives a check, we simply take him. There is really no other check. So the question is, though, why come here instead of somewhere like here? Well, I suppose if we come here, he comes back with another check. And then if we come here, there's no further checks, except for perhaps this one or this one, which we can take. But then he would actually have this check. So I don't think we really want to come over here and take the rook. I think we do just want to get out of the way of any checks as quick as possible. So the whole line would be, we attack the queen, trying to distract it. And if it moves, then we take the rook, again distracting the queen so that we can land a checkmate. In the meantime, he may insert this check, which we get out of the way. We don't care about this pawn because checkmate is a much bigger threat. And from there really are no more checks available to him. At least nothing good we would just take. So I think that's going to be the move. Let's try it. All right, so it was the move. He's responded with a move that I didn't foresee, but how good can it be? We're attacking this queen, so why don't we just take, and when he takes back, we're going to have a queen and a bishop versus two rooks. That's got to be really good. Another thing we could do is take this rook. It seems like it's free, but then he takes here, and after we take back and he takes, it's actually kind of even. So let's take the queen. Okie doke. Now the first thing that comes to mind is this weakened diagonal, which we can occupy with our bishop and give a check. And it's almost a mate because the king can't run to the square covered by the knight. The only reason it's not a mate is because this pawn can block momentarily, but after we take, that would be a checkmate. So that looks like an easy one. Just a simple mate in two. All right, now here we've been checked. Clearly, wherever we move, our rook is going to fall. But because of that, we probably don't want to move anywhere out of reach for our rook, because then our rook falls for free. So that really gives us three options, 1, 2, and 3. From each of these options, we still guard our all-important rook. Which one is going to be best? Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. If we come here, he takes our rook, and when we take back, he can take this pawn. But we then give a check, and when he goes back, we come up here, and we've laid out the red carpet, as Naroditsky would say. We're controlling these three squares for our pawn, and we can therefore advance the pawn at our leisure to get another queen. For that reason, if we do come here, he can't really take, because we just take back, and this pawn is just going to be unstoppable. If we were to come here or here, it's fine if he just takes and we're in the same position. But it also gives him an option to give us a check instead. And if we're here in particular and he gives us a check, well, what really have we got better than maybe coming here, he gives a check, and then we're sort of back in the same predicament. So that's not going to be the move because it just repeats itself. This could be after the check, maybe we come here. Maybe we come here, and then he has no further checks, and we can seek to simply push in this kind of a manner. So I guess my struggle now is going to be deciding between these two squares. Which one is better now? I guess one of the benefits with this move is the king also defends the pawn, which means that if he declines the trade, which we've already established is not good for him, so he shouldn't do this. Instead, he should probably move his rook away. Let's say, I don't know, somewhere like this, for example. Well, then we would actually be able to move our rook, giving a check, and not allowing him to capture our pawn because our king here defends the pawn. Which means that after the check of the king would have to move somewhere else. Let's say here, just for example. Then we can push this pawn again, and it's very close to becoming a queen. If he tries to come back to prevent that queen from occurring, well, then we can push the other pawn, and everything really looks good. Looks really good because we're going to have connected passed pawns there. But with our king here, it's a little bit difficult to push this pawn to make it into a passed pawn. Whereas over here, let's say he gives the check and we come here. Well, now our rook is kind of stifled. We would have to play this move first. Nothing necessarily wrong with that. My instinct says that we should play king f4 just because it doesn't give him any possibility of giving us a check. All right, doesn't give him any possibility of giving us a check. He can't take the rook, and if he moves away, our follow-up can be... Even if he moves there, okay, we can give a check. And once he moves... I mean, if he moves there, then we give check. And then we move our king up. And try and get everything else happening. I think that's just really good. I'm going to go for it. All right, so that's nice. So he didn't move this way. He's instead moved this way. All right, and fair enough. I do have this pawn adequately defended. I can give him check. I can give him that check there if I wish, just to move the king away. But I have to be aware that after he moves somewhere like this, this pawn is under attack. I can then provide a check from here, though. I can then provide a check from here. And that forces the king maybe here so that he's still putting a lot of pressure. But then I can push this pawn further. And it will be guarded by the rook. He doesn't have any checks available. And no recourse to stop me from queening. So after check, this actually loses as a result of this check. I guess he could come here. But then I can move my king. Everything is still fine. And I'll have the opportunity of connecting these pawns. That looks really good. Nice. All right. And we move on. Now, straight away I'm seeing that we have a check here. The king can't move at all, which means that he's forced to recapture, at which point we can recapture this rook. With check, king still can't move. He would have to bring the other rook back, which we take, and then it's going to be mate. So we don't take here, although perhaps we could. The problem with that is not that it allows rook takes rook. That's not a problem because then we would just play checkmate anyway. The problem is that it allows this, checkmate. So we need to move with tempo. And by with tempo, I mean with a check. And then with another check. So he's got no time to mate us because we've mated him and we're on to the next puzzle. Now, in this example, again, we've got this sort of a pattern, this setup where we're cutting the king off. And if only we could land something on the back rank without him having a defender on the back rank, it would actually be checkmate. How are we going to arrange that? That's another story. Now, we could just take this bishop to start with. We could absolutely take the bishop to start with. And now that I'm thinking about that, if he takes with the pawn, he actually opens up another avenue of attack. You know, because it is actually extremely difficult or impossible for us to get to this rook. But if we take here and he takes back and he opens this file, we could swing our rook across to g3 with a check, forcing the king here. And that would allow this check with the queen, forcing him somewhere like this. And then our other rook can come into the game. And that looks like the more promising way to go. In any case, taking this bishop is nice. He doesn't have any intermediate checks because we just return with the bishop and take. Which means if we take, he is essentially forced to take back, ruining his kingside pawn structure. It just looks like a really nice move to make. Then we can provide this check, forcing him here. That's all forced. What we could then do is move the rook somewhere like this. That would also be quite possible, because then his king would be cut off and we would be threatening both checkmate and checkmate. And what would he have available? You could say he can give a check, but we just take that. It's a free rook. He doesn't have any checks with the queen. He does. He does have a check with the queen. And it's a very, 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 very big one. In fact, after we take the bishop, he immediately has checkmate. So actually taking the bishop, although I thought it was innocuous, is a horrible, horrible move and a bad, bad blunder. Therefore, although what I'm also seeing now that I didn't see before, if bishop takes bishop and pawn takes, then this check, which forces the king to move, also uncovers an attack on the queen. I didn't see that earlier. The problem though is that, like I've mentioned, after bishop takes bishop, this is checkmate. And we cannot allow that. Cannot allow that. Therefore, we need to do something different. And what about this move then, after all? This checking move, the first one that we considered, we didn't really properly consider. But because it's essentially checkmate, it does force him to capture our rook. And after he captures the rook, we can then take his queen. And that's a good trade for us. Everything else is defended. I think that's going to be the move. So we got there in the end. All right, in this move, we've been checked. We can't move here or here, or here. So actually here, we are forced. Our hand is forced. It's just a question of whether we take with the king or whether we use the rook. Which way do we want to do this and why? My instinct is to take with the rook because A, it protects an otherwise undefended rook. And B, it doesn't allow any further checks. Whereas if we were to do something like this, maybe he can move the queen away with a check. And why should we allow that? So for those reasons alone, I'm going to take with the rook. Okay, he provides a check here. Now, we could take the rook. Then he's going to take this rook. And we can bring a rook back here. But then he's got this, which is actually mate. So we do have to be very careful that if we take and he takes here, we'd be better off bringing the queen back. Bringing the queen back. Okay, that's very interesting. But we don't actually have to take the rook. We could also simply move out the way. The problem with that is he takes. He takes in a very, very powerful way. So I'm going to take the rook. And then I would have dropped the queen back. All right, in this position, black is threatening our rook, but we're threatening the queen here. We've already lost a queen by the looks of things. So if we take the queen and he takes rook, then we take knight and he takes bishop, then it's, we both have a light squared bishop, we both have a rook, but it's going to be my knight versus his rook, and the pawn situation looks relatively equal. So he'd be up material there. We may not really wish to do that. Alternatively, if we take the knight, then he takes our bishop and he's got a queen. That's even worse. So this at first seems pretty difficult. Pretty difficult. So I think taking the queen makes some sense. After he takes this, can we then bring our bishop back to safety? That's going to be a question. I mean, here is knight jumps and takes a pawn. So maybe instead of the bishop coming this way, maybe instead our bishop comes back this way. Keep an eye on this pawn. Okay, so that way, I think we would be better off. So we take here, he takes here, we come back. Let's say he takes the pawn and we take back. Then we've got a bishop and a bishop, a rook and a rook, a knight and a bishop for the rook. That seems like probably the best we can do in this scenario. So we're going to come back. Good. Now, here we go with another puzzle. The knight is completely pinned here. But what if we castle? If we castle, he can take the knight. That's true. We don't love that. Then we can put a rook on this file, and if he takes, we can come here, and this queen is going to have to give itself up for a rook, but then it's going to be our queen versus these three minor pieces. I think that's probably not so great for us. An alternate course of action would be to play a nice forking move like this, but we need to get out of the way first. We need to get our king out of the way so that our knight can actually move to some of these nice squares that it has available to it. Another option is this check. That's nice. Why is it nice? Well, this diagonal is completely taken by our queen. This file is completely taken by our rook. Therefore, the king only has this square to go to. And from this square, we can even provide another check with a pawn. And because that king has absolutely nowhere to go, it would have to give up the queen, which we can then take. And then after he takes, we can castle with another check. That looks absolutely devastating. That looks absolutely devastating. Very nice. All right, so here's another position. We're moving along. We're getting towards this target. Now, what do we want to do in this position? It isn't clear, but I immediately see a few things. One is that we can take this knight, but he can capture in a couple of ways. What I did see was that if he takes with the pawn, we would be able to take the rook were it not for the bishop. So that made me think maybe we can take the bishop. Why would we take the bishop? Well, then let's say he takes here, then we can take here, and if he takes back, we can take the rook at the end. The problem is the moment we move this to take this, he's going to take our queen. But if we keep calculating, we then get to take this rook with check. King has to move. And really we've got a bishop and a rook for the queen, which in and of itself isn't really quite enough, I would say. Okay, not really quite enough. Another move we could try here is this move, bishop b4, hitting the queen. Now, if the queen takes the bishop, well, we just take back, and we've won the queen for a bishop. Then he's going to take here as well. That's okay. We can move out of the way. Maybe something like this. That seems fine. If he takes with the pawn, well, then we take this rook. And after he takes back, well, I'm not so sure that's actually very good. Another option may be to pin this knight with our bishop. That might be an option. It doesn't seem particularly forcing. But the threat is to take the knight. And after he takes back, we take, he takes, we play check. And then take the queen. So that's interesting that if we play this move, he can't take with the rook. Because if he takes with the rook, then we take the bishop with check and the queen falls. So if we take here, he must take with the pawn. And after he takes with the pawn, do we have anything? Our queen is attacked. I don't think we have anything. Yes, we can take the bishop and give up the queen to take this with check. And once he moves, we can come back and take this pawn. But there it's a rook and a bishop versus a queen and a rook. I would rather be white in that position. So I don't think that's going to be it. So this is a tough one. If we take here, he has to take with the pawn. That much we've established. If we come here and he takes with the pawn, then we can't take here anymore because we drop the queen immediately. Although we drop the queen immediately, we can then play check. When he comes here, we could play another check, but he's going to get away. He's going to be able to bring his other pieces to defend. That's my sensation. That's my feeling of that scenario. So I don't think that's going to be it either. So what do we do? I kind of like this idea of hitting the queen. It's very violent. If he takes, however, Then we take this. I think we must. And once he takes back, let's say he takes with the bishop. I don't really see the follow-up though. Don't really see the follow-up. Again, is there something along these lines? Maybe. Maybe we would have a rook and a bishop, essentially a rook, a bishop, and a pawn versus his queen there. That might do it if we don't think of anything else. Is actually taking this bishop. He takes queen. We take rook, check. He has to move either here or here. Then we go rook takes knight. He takes rook. We take a rook with check. He moves somewhere again. Wait a minute, what am I talking about? What am I talking about? After we take here, he cannot take the queen because our rook defends the queen. How did it take me 5 minutes to see this? Well, that changes things. So let's say we take this bishop. If he takes queen, we take a rook, and after he moves, then we take queen. So actually taking here is really nice. He cannot take queen when we've now established. And if he takes this, we've gone down an exchange, but we can then take a full knight. No, we can't take a full knight there. Oh, it has to be take bishop. It has to be take bishop. He can't take queen. At the same time, we're threatening to take rook. So if he just moves his queen away somewhere, we're going to take the rook. Whereas if he takes our rook back, well, then we take the bishop, the queen. So it's got to be take. He takes queen. We take rook first, and then we take queen. And we're threatening to take this knight. Oh, that one should probably not have taken me so long, but at least we got there in the end. Now in this scenario, I can see the queen is defending the knight and the queen is also defending this pawn. So the immediate move that comes to mind is rook takes knight, attacking the queen. So if we take here, we're already up a piece and we're threatening the queen. And if the queen takes us, we then have this check. And following that check, we can actually pick up this rook. And we just end up a whole lot of material. Now, an alternate course would be that we take here, he takes here. The problem there for him is that we then take the queen. So I think this is going to work. And then we should calculate, is it going to be check and then take a rook? Or is it just going to be this with a nice little fork? I think it's probably going to be check. It's much more forceful. It activates our queen. It wins a full rook as well. I suppose we're just going to take here now. That's probably going to be really very good. Let's do that. All right. Now, in this position, we've got this check available to us. With this check, he can't use any of these squares, but he could use these ones. And what do we do after that? Another option is he could drop his queen back. He could drop his queen back to defend. Now, if, let's say he comes here, well then we've got this move, which forces him here. And then... well, then I'm not 100% sure. His queen looks relatively menacing. He is threatening to take this pawn. So one thing we could also do is force a queen trade by giving a check this way. And if he takes, we can take like this or like this. probably like this. Although it allows him connected past pawns, our king is going to get up there and take that pawn really quick. Potentially, although then he's going to come down and get a queen. So at least we can halt the movement of these pawns. Meanwhile, we have these pawns to start menacing him. Either way, after the take, if he takes, we can take back like this if we want. That might be even better. Then this pawn is always under control by this one, which gives us time to just simply grab this pawn and then try and advance this pawn so that he has to go after it whilst we go after this pawn and then promote this pawn. That seems like a winning idea. If instead check and he moves, let's say here, well then check, he takes, we take, we're going to take the next pawn as well. So this seems like the critical move to calculate. Check, he takes, which pawn do we want to take back with? I'm going to say this one. I'm going to say let's capture toward the center. And then on his next move, I assume he's going to want to get closer to this pawn. Now, so let's say he comes here. I take this pawn. Then he comes here, halting the progress of my pawn. Well, in that case, I can bring my king here. And all these pawns here seem relatively useless. And it looks like, you know, I'm going to be able, let's say he plays a move like this. That seems like it should make sense. I think I can just continue coming over this way. And, you know, whatever he does, I can come here. Even if he comes here, I can give a check. Or I can, yeah, that's just got to be good. It's got to be good. Whereas if I take with this pawn, he goes here and it doesn't seem as good. Good. Okay, nice. Okay, nice. Now, here we have another position. We've got this nice queen, which is good. We've got a queen and a rook, so that's always nice. One thing we could try is something like this, just going after the pawn. And if he takes with the bishop, well, then he opens up probably this check. And then we have connected pass pawns rolling down the board. We could also try this move. He can't take with the queen because we then move our rook across and pin that queen. That's going to be nice for us. But he could take with the king, it would seem. The problem, though, for him, if he takes with the king is, again, we slide across with either of our pieces. And then all of a sudden, this king is really starting to be limited. It would have to move here. And once it moves here, we could play... Let's say we had given the check with the rook, in which case everything still applies, but here we would have the option of playing the queen here with check. So let's do that again. Let's calculate. If we play this move, the threat is also that we go check. And if he takes, we take back with check and then win the bishop. So there is a big threat there. There's a big threat there. And if he takes with the king, we can play check with our queen, forcing him here. Then we can play this check. And at that point, he can't go anywhere here or here. He also can't go anywhere here. So he's forced really to use one of these squares. Get rid of these ones. Okay. In fact, if he's here when we check him, that means he's actually forced to come back to this square. He's forced to come back to the highlighted square. Once he's on that highlighted square, I suppose we can provide this check. And let's say he then comes here. Something doesn't seem quite right. Something doesn't seem quite right about all that. Something doesn't seem quite right. What about the immediate check? Well, if it's an immediate check, he takes with the queen. So I don't think that's fantastic. This is all right, but it doesn't really have a threat. Like, he doesn't have to take here at all. He can just ignore it. And we don't have any associated. I mean, I guess this is an associated threat. I guess that's an associated threat. If he did take and we take back with check, he comes here. We say move along and we try and get these pawns rolling. It's probably good, but at the end of the day, we have given up a rook for those pawns. What's to say he can't give up his rook to give it back later on? So this idea is not necessarily a bad one. It does come with this threat, and therefore it does encourage him to take. Maybe after he takes, we do check with the queen this way, forcing him here. Or do we check with the rook this way, as I was saying, forcing him here? Then we go with the queen here, check. Now he can't come here at all. He can't come here, and he can't come here. So that forces him back to this square here. And then perhaps we can just move our queen here, where we threaten checkmate. And in the event that he tries to block checkmate, for example, with his queen, then it seems like he's actually relatively successful in that effort, but we also have access to this square, b6. So let's look at that one more time. Here, 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 check. And he has to move essentially to this square, so that here we're threatening both checkmate and also check here first. So he can stop the checkmate threat, so that one disappears, but we give this check anyway. We give this check anyway. If he moves into the corner, then our rook can come up and we're gonna win. So I think it's gonna be this. He takes with the queen. That makes life a lot easier. We just pin. I would actually really quite like to go back and just see if the calculation there was correct after king takes. Okay, so we can do this, but I wanted to see what was the story. What was the story if king takes? So if king takes, yes, we hit with the rook. Okay, if he blocks with the bishop, obviously we take back. So I thought it was more practical for him to come here. Now we can give this check. Again, he can block with the queen, but we simply take it. So again, much more practical for him to come here. And now that's unexpected for me, is this going for this check straight away. I guess following up with this check, and then wherever he goes, the queen comes in. That's really nice, and I missed that. What I thought was actually sliding the queen across here. And yes, he can block the mate threat, but then we come in here. What does he do? Oh, he blocks with the queen. So although I was right, I was wrong. I was right for the wrong reasons, because he blocks with the queen, and that is not something I saw. I thought there he would, move the king, and then our rook would come in. And, that's all well and good. I missed that he has this check as well. I probably would have moved my king, but anyway. Point being that actually the real answer here after this is check, which there's no other legal move other than to take. Then after check, doesn't matter which way he goes. Let's say here, we can come up with the queen, and it's a checkmate. Alternatively, if he were to come back here, which is the only other legal move, same deal, checkmate. So that is really, to me, that was the crux of it, was this bishop sacrifice, which I missed. But that's a really nice idea. A really nice idea. Okay, now let's continue on. We did still get it correct, albeit for the wrong reasons. That's chess for you. Now, I see straight away he is attacking our queen, but because of the pin along this file, this pawn is completely immobilized, which means our queen can escape and also take a pawn at the same time, immune to capture because of the pin. So if we were to take, we then have the ability to play check, and if he takes with the queen, we have the ability to play checkmate. So up here, we're really kind of threatening checkmate, or at the very least, we're threatening some very nasty things. Meanwhile, he doesn't have any checks with his queen that make any sense at all. He can take this pawn, but as mentioned, that's just he can't really move the queen away from this file because he's going to ultimately be checkmated immediately if he does. So what does he do here? Does he try and pin this rook? I don't think that helps because we still provide a check, and after he takes, the rook, even from here where it's pinned, still supports our queen, giving a checkmate. So I think this move is just a really nice one. What's his response going to be? Can he, for instance, attack our queen? Well, I would say not, because again, we have this check and then checkmate. How does he stop this? What if he just runs with his queen, with his king? Well, if he runs with his king, we play check, and he's going to have to move the king, doesn't matter where, but once he moves it, we can take the queen. And, in and of itself, that's pretty nice. We then have a queen and a rook versus two rooks. That's got to be good. So I don't see what his response is going to be to this. Other alternative moves to consider might be stuff like this check. If we give this check and he comes here, well, then we take a free rook. And after he moves, we take the other rook. We simplify down and we're a full rook ahead. That's beautiful. Problem with this move is not that he comes here. The problem is, what if he comes here? And I suppose then, what do we have? We can take this rook. He takes back, and we've kind of lost everything. So I'm going to go for this pawn. He provides a check. Okay, so I said he couldn't move off this file because of the checkmate. That was wrong. He can move off the file, but he has to move somewhere where he still guards the checkmating point. That's one option. This would have been another option, theoretically. Okay, so he's given a check here. I missed this as a possibility. And I think what we need to do now is move somewhere where he can no longer give any further checks. And that would be here, because anywhere on the back rank does lead to the ability to provide more checks. Whereas this, there are no more checks, unless he just wants to give his queen away for free. His rooks can't check me, his queen can't check me. So the only question is h2 versus h3, but h3, he has this check forcing a queen trade. Why would I allow that? It's got to be h2. There we go. We are approaching 50, so that's really nice, but let's keep it going. Here we would love to be able to play checkmate. Problem is the rook is in the way, and because of that, what about this distraction technique? What about this distraction technique? We're threatening here check, and when he takes back, checkmate. So that could be something good. And if he takes the rook, well, he's been distracted and we can provide a checkmate anyway. One thing to consider after we play a move like this is, does he have anything down here? Can he mate us somehow? For instance, check. We have to take. He takes back with check. We take. Then he takes. Well, then we take anyway, and we're still a rook to the good. So I don't think any of these checks work. This check, however, on the other hand, so say we were to play this, he goes check. King can't move, so we have to take. Queen takes, and all of a sudden we've been mated. So as nice as this move may look, it actually simply doesn't work because of the threat down here of check with mate to come. Because of that, we need something more direct. Maybe something that comes with check. And therefore, what about this move? Queen takes with check. Queen takes with check, he has to take back. Then we can take here with check. But he simply moves away, and I don't think we're getting anywhere there. The threats down here are still all real. With this check again, he takes. We do have this check, But he takes here, which is not necessarily good. And if he takes with the rook and we go check, he comes back with the rook. Then we take, he takes here, and the other rook comes back with check, and that's actually mate. That's going to be the answer. It's a queen sacrifice. And then we don't capture the rook back. Instead, we give a check, then we capture the rook, then we back rank checkmate him with the help of that pawn. All right, that was nice. Now here we can take this in a number of ways. It's defended twice though. So even if we take and he takes, it seems like we're going to come back and be in a situation where we've just traded equal material. But what I do see, and why I would like to take with the bishop, is because I want to do something, as the Croatians would say, što prije, as soon as possible. And what I want to do is land a queen here. Because if I have a queen here supported by a bishop, I'm threatening checkmate. And what that really means is, although I've only got 2 players directly attacking the d4 square, which he also has 2 defending, I really have secretly a third, and I want to get that one there as soon as possible. If I start with the knight, he takes here, then I have to take again in order to clear the way for my queen. But in taking again, it gives him the option to bring his queen down, and therefore when I bring my queen up, he can just trade queens and I've got nothing. If I start with the bishop, he takes back, I don't take, instead I bring my third secret weapon in, attacking the bishop for a second time and also going for mate. That's going to be the move. The classic double attack. Okay, he attacks my queen, but I'm attacking this bishop twice, so I can simply take. And we are looking good. All right, this is a very complicated position. Looks like there's a lot of things going on, so we'll try to break it down into an understandable way. This bishop is pretty annoying for our king, but there's nothing really else going on at the moment. You know, if he provides a check, you know, we always have h1 to go to, but also all of these squares where he can provide checks from, they are all very much solidly defended. And if we wanted, we could always just whip this knight off the board, and he doesn't have really the mechanics to provide a dangerous check in the sense of a checkmate. Nevertheless, this bishop is a little bit annoying. It's also, should be noted, undefended. One thing we could do, if we wanted, we could take the knight, and after he takes back, presumably like this, well, we could just drop the bishop back and look for a trade. And that might be okay, but what else have we got here? We've got this. We can take this with check. He can take it in a number of ways. So although it's a fork against the king and the rook, it's just defended really, really well. So it's hard to get at that at the minute. Very hard to get at that at the minute. So very sort of congested position and nothing really obvious coming to light. Now this is a really nice knight, beautifully posted, beautifully secured by 2 pawns. Do we want to give it up for a bishop? A bishop that's otherwise hemmed in by all its dark squared pawns? My instinct is probably not. Probably not. It kind of helps him get his queen here, at which point he can put a rook on this file and then move away with check, threatening our queen. Why would we allow any of those possibilities? I don't think that's going to be the move, unless there's something concrete. But after he takes, let's say we come here, what is the concrete move? Let's say he pins us immediately. The knight already can't move. That's fine. We can move away and he can take this. We can take back, but look, I don't think that's going to be the move. Because what's the follow-up? That's the issue, is that what's the follow-up? Now, I don't see anything there that's amazing. So what to do? We could just move the king. Why would we move the king? Because we want to bring the knight back to g1 to attack this bishop. But, you know, that might be in vain if he just takes our knight. That said, if he takes our knight, we get to take back in one way or the other. And we've gotten rid of his strong knight, because as strong as our knight is here, he's also got a strong knight here as well. So, I mean, that's an idea. That's an idea. It's an idea, but not necessarily the only idea. You know, this bishop of ours, while it looks pretty nice, it is also sort of just staring at a bunch of pawns as well. So it might be worth getting rid of our weak bishop for his strong knight. To the same extent that we don't really want to trade our knight for his weak bishop. Maybe on the flip side, maybe we do want to trade our weak bishop for his strong knight. Particularly because once he takes back, he's just going to have, pawns again on these dark squares, shutting down our bishop. So maybe we just take, and after he takes back, then the question again becomes, what's our follow-up? Maybe we go for something like this, just trying to get rid of this bishop. Those things could be true. Now, what I haven't done is just generally assess the situation. So he's got 2 bishops and 2 knights, as do I. 2 rooks and a queen, as do I. 3 pawns on the queen side, as do I. 2 pawns in the center, and 3 on the queen side. Both of us obviously have a king, so material is equal. We both have this strong knight. The pawn structures are actually really very similar, except that we've got this fianchettoed pattern here and he doesn't. But it's very similar. I think, it's hard to say. It's really hard for me to evaluate this position. And I certainly don't see any direct tactics here. But we're going to have to start looking around. So let's try a few things. What happens if we push this pawn, as absurd as it seems? I suppose he's just going to take. And that's probably correct. But then we take the knight here. And that's actually interesting because if he takes our bishop, our knight drops back. And we've actually won both of these for the sake of just this. And a pawn, to be fair. But after this, he could start by taking. If he starts by taking, though, well, then I take with the queen, and this bishop's got nowhere to go other than giving itself up for a pawn. So that actually could be nice. And again, if he takes, we take. If he takes this, then I take here. So this actually might be a nice move. It does allow his knight to jump in with a tempo on the queen, but we can just take the knight, for example. And if he then takes this knight, which by the way comes with check, again, I can take that knight. And this bishop is again not looking so healthy after all. So I actually really like this move g4, and I only looked at it because you have to look at something. I didn't really love this. This didn't look too amazing. You can also look at all sorts of other moves, but there's not really that many moves to consider in this kind of position. So you can sort of just look around and see which one you prefer. And as absurd as this g4 move looks, at first, it sort of seems to work. Again, if he takes, I'm taking this knight. And I've won a knight for a pawn. And then if he takes a knight, I take a bishop. Whereas if he takes the bishop, I also take a bishop. So I'm actually going to play g4. Oh no. The streak comes to an end. We were relatively close there to 50. We got to 43. Maybe I should have thought a bit longer there. But if we go back, what was wrong with g4? Let's try and figure this out because this is a learning opportunity. What if he starts with check? Well, I didn't think that really mattered because we just take with the queen. We're then attacking this bishop. And the bishop really has nothing better to do other than give itself up for a pawn. So I thought that was really not a problem. So after g4, if he takes, well, I suppose he doesn't have to take. He could just immediately jump in here, as I had mentioned, attacking my queen. Then I take. He takes like this. But in that scenario, I can take this. And after he takes back, I then take the bishop. So that still seems good for me. I don't see why I need to take this first. And if I do take, is the follow-up still to play this move? Probably, because after you take, doesn't matter how he takes back. Let's say he takes like this, blunting my bishop. Now g4 is even better because you hit the bishop directly. You hit the bishop directly. It has nowhere to go. And if it takes this, you've got it all defended. So maybe that's what it was about, is just getting the knight out of the way first rather than second. Because, I mean, what was that even the answer? And what really was the response? So after we take, and he takes, doesn't matter which way, they want to say this way, it is then g4. That's the operative idea. But what's wrong with g4 immediately? He can take the bishop with check. He doesn't have to take the knight with check, which would be fine. He can take the bishop with check. And at that point, he just gets to take the b4 bishop, the g4 pawn with his bishop for free. So that's what I missed. And in principle, rather than going for this kind of a thing, where even if he were to take, I then have this sort of indirect defense of the g4 square. In principle, why do that when instead you can be much more direct, taking this to, uncover a defense of this square so that this is now a direct attack. Just in principle, being direct seems like a better idea. All right, so we got to a streak of 43. That's more like it, at least. Let's do another streak. We've got another about 35 minutes or so, I think, today. So we can build up a bit of steam. Let's give it a go. So straight away, we have a free rook here. Let's take it and move on. Here we are white to move. What do we want to play as white here? We do have a check here, and that actually looks a lot like checkmate because our rook covers everything. And the pawn and king cover everything, so that's a checkmate. Here we have a check, and it's a very dangerous check. There's only 2 squares for the king to go to, and whichever of them that he chooses, we can then provide another check. So that's going to be a checkmate as well. All right, here we have a checkmate, nice and easy. In this scenario, it's black to move. We don't have a checkmate here. We could take the queen, but what's the point? He just takes back. Excuse me. So what do we want to do here? Not necessarily easy. He's attacking our bishop and our queen. Our queen is defended, however. So interestingly, we can provide this check. If he takes with the bishop, we take the queen. I think that's going to be the move. Here we have what looks like a checkmate. He then gets to take our knight, and then we get to give what is a checkmate. Here we can take once if we want, or we can start by giving this check. This check is nice. It forces him to come back. Then we can take, and we're threatening mate on h7. Wouldn't be mate necessarily, but it still looks nice. Whereas we can give check as well. That's quite direct. Let's say he takes, then we don't really seem to have much of a follow-up though. So I'd rather get the queen active, very active, and also deactivate his king to a large extent. And only then probably go for this. So let's do that first, because out of principle that seems like it's a good idea. Now we can decide whether we want to take here. If we take there, we're threatening check. He comes here, and then check. And things are looking really dangerous at that point for him. So, I mean, that's one option. Another option is we can provide a check here. That forces him to come back to one of these squares. Either of these squares leads to a check, which he then takes. And I don't see what the follow-up there really is, so I don't see what the point of that whole foray is. I think we take this pawn. If we take this pawn, he's got this check, but we move out of the way and he's got no further checks, which is good. He would have this check as well, still no further checks. So I think we take the pawn because why not? All right, now in this scenario, you got to ask, why not just take the knight? If we take the knight, he's going to take our bishop. So therefore, we should take the bishop first with check, and only after he takes back, we're going to take the knight. So let's do that. Here he's attacking the queen. We don't actually have to move the queen. We do have this double check. We take here, it's check. It's also check. The king has to move. Let's say he takes the pawn. we then have a checkmate. Alternatively, if he comes somewhere like this, well, we have so many options at our disposal, it can't be bad. Okay, now here we can move our knight into the center of the board, attacking his queen and also attacking this pinned knight. So if he takes our knight, well, then we take the queen with check. And although he returns back, that's got to be a good trade for us. We've won a lot of material there. If instead he moves the queen, doesn't matter where, just somewhere, well, then we can take here with check. And when he takes back, we can take again with check, forcing a trade. And then we end up with a rook and a bishop with two rooks. Sorry, a knight and a bishop with two rooks versus two rooks and a bishop. We have a full extra piece. It's going to have to be the move. If he takes, like I said, we take the queen. Okie doke, we are making progress. We can take this knight if we want. And once he takes back, there's a nice little forkarooski right there. And I think that looks really nice. Why not? Here we go. We cannot provide a checkmate here because it's guarded by this knight. But what if we start with check? Doesn't matter how he takes back, the queen then will have an actual checkmate. So that's nice. Here again, we can move away with check, and king can't move this way. Could not move that way either because the bishop will be guarding. So after he takes, we simply have a checkmate. That's very forceful and looks very nice. Now here we can take, and when he takes back, he's got a knight versus what we have. So I'm not too sure that's what we want to do, but it may well be. After check. But also, what else do we do? After check, he comes here. I guess, we could take the opposition, but what's the point? What's the point in that? We could play a move like this as well. Ooh, we could also play a move like this, c4, check. Trying to make him take the pawn and give up the defense of his rook. He does not have any kind of knight forks for us because our rook and king are on different colors. And therefore, the knight can't get to them both. So on c4, king cannot take. King cannot take. King can't come here either because we guard those squares. King can't come here or here or here because those squares are all guarded. King would have to come down here. In any case, whether he comes here or here, he loses the rook. So I like that a lot. Here we clearly have some nice discoveries. This is a double check. The king has to move. Almost has flavors of some sort of a smothered check. But even if we just go check, he moves. And then take here with a pretty nice fork. I mean, he can take this, but we take there. I mean, in any case, this looks like it's going to be the first move, right? Really looks like it's going to be the first move. So let's do it. Once he moves, we can look for something better, like maybe we can take here. But is that actually better? I don't know if that's really better. Probably not. It's probably no better. We could take here with our queen. Then, I think we're just better off going for the fork. Better off going for the fork. If he takes this, we take one of these guys. And if he pins us, we don't care. We just take the queen. And after he takes back, we've got way too much material. So I think the fork's going to be nice. Now here, we might be able to just take the rook because if he takes our queen, we can start pushing our pawn to queendom. So let's say we take, he takes, and we push. Can he get the king around in time? Well, no. That would be a check, and we would pick the knight up. Can he bring the knight back? Well, no, because we still just get a queen. Can he bring the bishop in? Well, no, because we get a queen. So we're going to get a queen if we take the rook. So we take a rook, we give a queen, and we get a queen. Essentially means we're up a rook. Still, it's going to have some work to do. We're still going to have some work to do, but we're going to be up a lot of material. Now, in this scenario, how do we wish to proceed? Possibly with the move rook h8, that comes to mind. Given that our knight defends these squares, rook h8 actually forces the king to capture, and then our queen can swing across with another check. That forces the king back to where he starts. and then we can come up here and deliver a checkmate. So that's a forced mate. Here he's just taken. He's attacking our rook for a third time. It's only defended once. Previously it was only attacked once. But with this move, he's brought 2 extra attackers in. So, and if we take here, it's check. So he doesn't have time to take this rook, which by the way is defended anyway. So that's one thing we can do is we can start with check. He's probably going to bring the other rook in if we do that. Another option though is that this knight is actually undefended. So, well, it's not undefended, but it's under-defended because we're attacking it twice. And he's only defending it once. So if we take this rook, it doesn't matter how he takes back, we can then take here. Now he does then have this check, but given that we have a rook here defending the bishop, our queen can come back. So I think that's going to look really nice. Let's take twice. Now here, why would we not just take the bishop? Well, maybe there's something better. Maybe there's something better like this. Check. Check completely forces him here, and then there's this check, which is just made in 2. Here, of course, we can give a check if we like, and it might be well advised to do that because if we do, some random move like take this pawn, well, then there's going to be a very big problem here, a very big problem indeed called check. And once he moves, he can bring this check in, and we're going to have to give up the queen. That's not going to be very good at all. So we have to be careful about that. But if we take the rook, that does take away the problems. It's just that after the next check, do we have any great follow-up? Do we have any great follow-up there? Not so clear to me. Let's see. Check he takes. Check. Where does he want to go? Wherever he goes, I suppose we can just take this pawn. And if he then takes and we take, in the resulting endgame, he's got this extra pawn. So that's why I'm not so super convinced about that idea. I'm not super convinced about that idea. I like that this pawn is guarding these squares, but it's not necessarily close enough to be able to give a checkmate in conjunction with the queen because the king still has this whole back rank here. So I'm not too sure about that. Not too sure about that. I wonder if there's going to be some way we can win the undefended bishop though after like a check he takes. Sorry, after a check and he takes, we come here with a check. Really his options are these. Those are his options. Let's go clockwise. Let's say he comes here. If he's there, then we can give this check. And that's what I mean. Like we can give a check and also win this bishop, and that would be very nice. Same deal applies. I know we're not going clockwise anymore, but same deal applies if he comes to e8. And now that I think about it, if we do go clockwise and he comes to g7, well, then we have the same deal, but on this rank. And also the same deal there. So that is going to be the move. We're going to win that undefended bishop in one way or other. Okay, now in this position, it kind of looks equal off the top of the bat for someone that doesn't know their rook endgames, and I'm guilty. That is me. Rook endgames are difficult, but in general, what we see here is we both have a king, rook, and a pawn. A king, rook, and a pawn. It's our turn to move. What are we going to do? Now, taking the opposition generally seems like a nice idea. Generally seems like a nice idea. It means that his rook can't move. I mean, if it comes here, we take. If he moves further away, then perhaps we can actually take here, and after he takes, we come here. He moves the rook again, we get a queen. Take would still be a draw, actually. But let's say, what else can he do? Let's say if he moves the king, we take the pawn. So unless he wants to move the king like here or here. But in the case that he does that, we can then move our rook onto the g file and try and get the rook up here. I think that's going to be the plan. Defend the pawn. Doesn't really matter what he does. He can't push the pawn, that's for sure. And yes, he can move the king somewhere, or he can move the rook, but in every case there, we can play our rook this way. And the threat there is going to be too large. So we could come here and give a check, and once he moves, come up here, but again, he takes. That's the problem. Another option is we can come here right now with the king. That might even be better. Because now he has to move, then we get a queen, he takes it, we come back here, and we've got a rook versus this pawn. That should be winning for us as well, rather than coming here, he pushes, we come here, he pushes again, we take, he pushes again, we come back, looks winning as well. So how do we choose between things that look like they're all winning? Surely they're not all winning. I think this is very direct. This is extremely direct. Our rook is safe. His pawn is far away from queening. He would have to come and take our rook first. So I think this is the more direct approach. If he simply takes, we take back. And I can't imagine we're ever going to lose this. We just bring our king down to help out. If he does something like this, again, we get a queen, he takes it, we come here. So that way he's drawn our king as far away as possible. If he comes somewhere like this, we then start bringing our king back. He pushes his pawn, our king comes closer, he comes closer to our rook, we come closer to his pawn again, he brings his pawn forward, we come here, now we're on the thread of taking the pawn, he comes closer to our rook, but at that point we can take and win the game. So I think that is just a winning game. Very nice. Okay, now here we have two connected pawns versus this knight. We probably want to keep his king out of this picture. So for that reason, I'm liking the idea of taking this opposition. If he keeps coming across, we follow him until such a time as we attack the knight. Okay. If we come across, he's got no checks with the knight. So let's say he comes across again. Now he does have the option of a check or a check. But in both cases, we can just move across. And although he has another check, we can then just attack that knight. The knight's going to have to move. It looks like we're just going to get a queen. So I'm going to take the opposition. He immediately comes here so as to prevent us from taking this. But can we come here now? He comes back. We come here. Let's say he comes here. We come here. He comes here. We come here. He comes here. We take. He takes. We step back and we're going to get a queen and win the game. So that looks like it probably is the move. Alternate moves might be something like this. That might be also good, but then he comes in here. Then he comes in there, which I like less. Even though we come here, he comes here. This he can always take in that case. So I actually like this. And now, I think we just continue moving across. All right, now here there's a check. There's also this check, which would work if it weren't for both the pawn and the rook, but the pawn and the rook are there. However, it may work anyway. Because it's a fork on the queen and rook, it actually forces one of these guys to capture. If he takes with the pawn, well, then we can take this queen. That's the thing. Which means he's actually forced to take with the rook to keep our bishop pinned and to prevent us from taking. But in that scenario, he's taken a knight. In that scenario, we can play check. And when he moves the king or the rook, we can take the rook either here or here. We can take the rook. And when he takes back, then we can take the queen. And what we've really done there is we've got the queens off the board, but we've won an exchange. We've won the rook for that. So I think that's actually going to be the move. There are easier ways to win the exchange, like we can win an exchange right here. But the problem with that is we're so open. Our king is so open that we're likely to somehow lose there, whether it's by like he takes, we take. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. This is very forcing and very direct. He has to take. Then after check, he gives us however we want. We will be able to take. the queen, things seem to settle down a little bit for us. We could also start with this check, and that's worth noting. But after he moves, we lose the possibility of playing this kind of a thing. So I think this is actually the move. Nah, again, I got too hasty too quick. Not a bad streak, but just a bit too hasty. So what would be wrong with this move straight away? I think, like I say, that forces him to take. Then I was going to go check. And then it doesn't really matter what he does. Let's say he comes here, I take. And it doesn't matter how he takes. Let's say he connects his pawns, I take the queen. If he does something like this, that's fine, I come back. And I felt like this is pretty good for me. At least not necessarily bad. I'm up essentially almost an exchange. So what did I get wrong in that variation? What can he play here? Well, he takes. Yeah, I come here. Yeah, he comes forward. And like I said, I would have done the same thing if he had come here or if he'd moved the king. I still would just take the rook anyway. That's what I would have done. So what's wrong with this? He takes, we take the queen. He does this. We come back. So far, so good. He takes, this is exactly the line that I calculated. I take with the king. Okay, whereas here I calculated this, but even here, so now he's got these two strong pawns. So if we just take one step back, if instead he had taken this pawn, well, now it's a draw. But by pushing this pawn where it's defended twice, he's now actually got these two connected pass pawns, which is a big, big worry. That should have come into my consciousness here, where I should have said, well, if I take the rook, he's going to take back and have connected passed pawns. That should always be a feature of your decision making, that he's going to have connected passed pawns. And can he use them? He's going to be able to storm very quickly. And if I'd been keeping that in mind, I might have thought about the possibility that he just keeps on pushing and that this gets really dangerous for me. So the correct move was, in fact, to start with the check. I didn't like that because he moves up here out of the way. But there we have this check. And once he deals with it, what's the deal here? I don't quite understand. We can get rid of the pin that enables us to take a queen. I suppose that does make sense, doesn't it? Because the problem and the reason we couldn't take this queen was because of this pin. And we were trying to get rid of that pin by putting a piece in the way, forcing him to taking up here with a check, taking this, and when he takes back, we've broken the pin and can take the queen. But a better way to do it is queen. And if he comes here, we can take, and the pin no longer exists. So that would have just been a lot better. And alternatively, if he just tries to move away, if he comes here, the pin's no longer on and we can take the queen immediately. And if instead he moves up into the corner, well, then we can do this. And if he does this, this is pinned. Again, we can just simply take, break the pin and win the queen. Or if instead he moves away again, we can chase him. And again, if he moves away, well, finally, we can take the pinning piece to win the queen. So that was actually pretty difficult, but it makes a lot of sense now, as tends to happen with these things. Now, I think we've got about another 10 minutes or so left on the timer. All right. So let's keep going. We're here to train. We're here to learn. Here to get better. So let's keep trying to do that. There's a checkmate. Here it looks like it's going to be a checkmate as well on the back rank. This looks like a checkmate. This one here looks also like a checkmate because check. So let me close that. Check and then mate. This one, it's black to move. We can pin this rook. That's normally a nice way to start in these kinds of scenarios. Just to get it clear in our minds, as black, we're trying to get a queen up here. So if we do something like this, and then he comes here, we take, we're going to get a queen and we're going to win. Okay, we're white here, so we're trying to push forward. It looks very much like we can play a check. He can sack the knight, but we're still going to get up here and get a queen well before he does. All right, now it's white. We're looking marvelous here. What about this little check? This little check enables him to only come here, and then we can mate him. So that's a mate in 2. He's blocked this, but this is now pinned. Keep that in mind. So we can add pressure to the pinned piece if we please. We can also provide checks from here, here, or here. And I think of those, probably this one might be best because we're still putting pressure on this. We are forcing him here. Whereas if we come here, we're also forcing him. Well, he could come here. So we want to take this possibility away from him. So we come here, taking all this away, forcing him here, and then the knight can jump in with a mate. All right, so he's attacking our queen, but our queen can't come here. What can our queen do? Our queen can come here, pinning the knight, if we want. We could also start with a check. Now the king, after the check, the king can't move here because we guard that square. In fact, the only square that the king can go to would be up here, and then we can mate him. So let's just do a simple mate in 2. All right, he's could have taken our knight already. Certainly he can still take it on the next move. What are we going to do though? Because his king looks very, very precariously positioned. Now we can start with a check. And this check forces him here. And then we can give one more check. I suppose then he's got this square though. Then we can give a check here. And it looks like we're going to mate him. Because if we go check and he comes here immediately, well, then I think if we come immediately with this check, he comes up, and then this check, he takes the knight. So I think after check and he comes here, I think we have to go this check to force him here, and then this check to force him back here, and then this. So check, 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 and then mate. Looks like we can take this. Looks like we can just simply take that. We could even maybe take it with the queen, threatening to take the rook, and if he takes here, then we take back. We've got 2 rooks versus his knight versus his king. But why not take like this? Why not take like this? He can give a check. We have to move. And he can then give another check, taking this pawn. But once we move again, then we have 2 rooks versus 1. And he does have, essentially, he has these 3 passed pawns, and that's important potentially. So after check, he comes here, we come here, or even here. He takes that. We could come here, just threatening mate. Or we could just come here so that our rook can get back in the game. At the end of the day, it is a rook. It is a rook there. So, I mean, he's attacking us. Why would we want to give it up this way? I don't necessarily think we do. The only problem with taking with the pawn is it allows this check. So if we take with the queen, there's no check available to him except this one. And then we can just take like this, and There we may well be better. We are threatening something like this. I wonder if that's the, that's potentially going to be a very dangerous pawn for him to deal with. This is a pass pawn as well. It's about to advance with tempo. So, look, it's a tough decision here, but take, check, I move, check, I move again. Let's say something like this, forcing a queen trade. I can say I don't really care. I can advance my pass pawn. If he takes the queen, I take back. If he then gives a check down here, I can just block. He takes, I take. If he takes, well, I've just got way too much material there. I think that just looks good. So I'm going to take it in this manner, and I'm going to move. Now here, yes, we can take the pawn, but we can also start with a check. We can start with a check, and that might be nice. He can't then come here because then we take this with check, forcing him here, at which point we have this check, and then he comes here, and it looks like he's almost mated. In fact, because the bishop's here, this is actually out of bounds, which means after this check, he's forced here, and then that's just simply mate in two. All right, now he's attacking this. We have it defended. We can also play this check. That's quite nice. I like this because, more so than just taking this, in which case he takes back. Everything's defended. But if we come here with a check, we're attacking his queen, and it's checked. So he can't actually take our rook. The best he can do is take the knight, which we take back, and then we're forking both of these guys. That's a fantastic move. And is there a nice follow-up here? I think we just take the queen. I think we just take the queen. Now, here I think we can sack the queen, because after he takes and we give a check here, yes, he can give the queen up, but after we take that as well, there's just nowhere to go. This pawn is actually the star of the show. All right. Now here, it would be nice, given the bishop's scope covering the g7 square, it would be really nice to be able to get a rook up here and just land on the back rank with a mate. I don't think we can do that because if we take, he takes, and there's no back rank mate there. But what we can do is attack the rook. If the rook moves here, obviously we take. If the rook moves up here, we take the knight, and that's really nice. If he moves here, we take the knight. If the knight moves, well, we take the rook. So that just seems really nice. And if here, well, we just, like I said, take the knight. He can't take the rook because we would mate him. Sorry, the bishop. We're getting towards the end of this, but it's been a pretty good session. Let's try and end on a good note. We've got a few more to come. We've got this check. That actually forces him back to one of these squares, at which point we have this check. But it also makes me just wonder, like, what if we start with this? If we start with this, then if we give the check, I suppose he can still come here. So after checking, he comes back, which seems pretty nice. Then we can actually just take the knight. And then even if he takes this, we're up quite a substantial amount of material there, which I think is very nice. I think that's very nice. Another thing we could do is we could take this pawn. After he takes, we give a check. Other moves here. Check. He moves back. He certainly wouldn't want to come here because then we take the knight with a check. So this is why we can actually calculate very accurately that after check he has to come here. Then I guess we could calculate this check or even this capture. Let's see what happens if this check, I think he then comes here. Whereas if this capture, he probably just captures here. So I think we're just going to go this, and then just take the knight. Yes, he takes a pawn, but we can come here and we're going to win one of these two pawns. That's going to have to be it. Now here, this is a pinned rook. We can apply extra pressure to the pinned piece by pushing this pawn forward. That's one idea. But another idea is we can provide this check. He can't run that way. He could only potentially run here, but then he actually just loses the rook. Meanwhile, our king doesn't look super happy either, so we have to be very careful that after check and he moves here, can we even take this? Can we even take this? Well, we might not have to. We could maybe play this check, because this check looks a hell of a lot like checkmate, unless he blocks with the rook. So check, he comes here, check, he blocks with the rook. But then we have check. He has to come back. No, it's actually not super easy. So check, he comes here. Let's say we take the rook. Problem with that is, no, he can't give checkmate there. As long as our bishop's there, that's nice. What about this? Well, that's not checkmate if we've taken the rook. Actually, it is checkmate. We can't take this because he guards it. Can't come up here because he guards that square. That's the alarm. That's the end of this session. So we'll finish this puzzle and then we'll call it there. But yeah. And we can't come down here because he guards that. We can't move anywhere. So we have to be careful that after check he moves here. We cannot take the rook because he has checkmate. That's the basic fact. So after check, if he moves, we have to come up with something better. Maybe check. Maybe check. But there he just repeats. So unless we want something, we need something better than a repetition. So check, he comes here. Check. He blocks. Maybe we take. And after he takes back, do we have anything there? Don't really think so. So check, he comes here. Check, he comes here. Check. He moves back. We can provide another check, but he comes here. Then perhaps there's a check up here. And actually we could start with this check. That looks better. That looks better. I really need to improve in terms of my systematic methodological thinking. Looking at all the violent moves. I spent a lot of time looking at this particular violent move, but there's other checks available that I could have looked at. And this one looks better immediately because he can't go anywhere on the first rank. He has to step literally here. He can't come here either. And that means we get to take the rook with check. Now that can't be bad. That can't be bad. If he comes anywhere further towards our bishop, we can come here, check him away, and then deal with the rest from there. Maybe bringing the bishop back, by the way, wouldn't be checkmate. So if we had it on this check, he comes here, we take. It's not checkmate here because our bishop comes back. But because our bishop is pinned, he can't get over here. His own bishop is in the way. But let's say he takes, check. It's very dangerous. So I think I prefer this in every day. Check, check, check. And he has come closer. I said here we were going to come here. And that's good. Let's leave it there. We'll be back again some other time. Thank you for watching. Hopefully we're going to keep on improving our chess skills and achieve the goals. So until next time, cheers.